Hello students, today we are going to discuss about Victorian era. The Victorian era was preceded by Romanticism and followed by the Edwardian era. Victorian literature, mainly written in English during the reign of Queen Victoria, that is 1837 to 1901. The preceding Romantic period poetry had tended to dominate. Novel became the defining literary art form of Victorian period. Charles Dickens, William Thackeray, and three Bronte sisters, Charlotte, Emily, and Annie, dominated the first part of the Victorian era, while major novelists of the later period of Victorian period was Thomas Hardy, Robert Browning, and Alfred Tennyson were the major poets. J.M. Hopkins and Matthew Arnold and William Blake were also famous poets of Victorian era. George Bernard Shaw and Oscar Wilde were also prominent writers. The Victorian age can be described as the age of peace and material prosperity. During the period, England witnessed the Industrial Revolution, which increased the national wealth manifold. It saw the rise of utilitarianism, which viewed from one perspective came to be increasingly recognized as an extreme reaction against Romanticism. With the passage of the Reform Bill, the middle class came to occupy a more prominent place in the social hierarchy. The age also saw the tearing apart into pieces of the traditional concept of religion and morality due to the researches in the field of science and technology and geology. All these tremendous change in the science of nature and that of human origins brought about a corresponding change in the attitudes, values, and standards of life, as also standard of living of the Victorian age. It was an era of comparative peace. An undercurrent of restlessness can be seen running through the entire range of Victorian literature. This jarring note in the otherwise placid and elegantly smooth literature of the Victorian era culminated in an open revolt and can occupy a central place in the last quarter of the 19th century. It was an era of material affluence, political awakening, democratic reforms, industrial and mechanical progress, and scientific advancement, social unrest, educational expansion, idealism, and pessimism. The literature of this period, wonderfully rich in personal quality, embodies the spirit of the age. The Victorian age is characterized by the following main features which transform both life and literature. As we know that literature is the mirror of the society, the Victorian literature reflects the main traits of Victorian society. This was an era of peace and prosperity. Victorian era was remarkable for its uninterrupted peace. Only colonial wars that took place during this period, but they did not seriously disturb the national life. It was also the age of peace and prosperity. It made remarkable progress in industrial and mechanical development. Factories were established all over England. A large-scale production added to the national wealth. Rapid industrialization, commercial and material expansion also resulted in many evils, such as appalling social condition of the new industrial cities, the slums, and the exploitation of cheap labor, often child labor. The evils of industrial revolution verbally painted by Dickens and Mrs. Gaskell and Kingsley. The disintegration of village community, which was also necessitated by industrial expansion, is expressed in Thomas Hardy's novels. The new education expansion was registered by the passing of Education Acts, by which education to a limited degree became compulsory. The education expansion produced an enormous reading public. As the publication of books became cheap, their production was multiplied. Education brought political and social awakening among the masses. Press became a powerful political force with the diffusion of education. A great reading public grew up unlike any that had existed before. The new reading public had no high literary standards, so the most popular form of literature was the fiction novel. It was an era of turbulent social changes. Man was caught between two worlds, the one dead and other not yet formed. The new democratic, scientific, and industrial forces tended towards the breaking down of the existing order. Hence, an effort was made to reconcile the old and the new, to bring about a compromise between science and religion, between the demand for progress and the need of stability, order and peace in the field of political life. There was a compromise between democracy and aristocracy, and this kind of compromise is known as Victorian compromise. Social unrest and realism. Victorian era was characterized by great social unrest. The class of wealthy capitalists and mill owners was rolling in wealth and luxury, but on the other hand, factory workers and laborers were leading a life of abject misery and poverty. The impact of science on Victorian literature. The progress of science kept pace with the progress of democracy due to the spread of popular education, newspapers, magazines, and cheap books. The facts and speculations of scientists and thinkers passed rapidly into the possession of reading public at large. The doctrine of evolution, which is generally associated with the name of Darwin and Herbert and Spencer, had completely revolutionized all current ideas about nature, man, and society. Faith in the biblical view of cosmology and creation was shaken and was replaced by Darwinian theory of evolution. Through a struggle for existence and the survival of the fittest, the impact of science was so powerful on human mind that it had affected every channel of intellectual activity. The Freudian psychology also affected the human mind of that era. Women's liberation also characterized the Victorian era. Women were given political rights and more of them came out of their homes to take up independent careers. In the political sphere, the progress of democracy was a remarkable achievement. The political supremacy of the aristocracy had been destroyed by the Reform Bill of 1832, but there was no improvement in the condition of the working classes. And there was a revival of interest in the past. The Victorians were interested in contemporary social and political life. They still had a fascination for the old age. Some of the writers and poets had shown love for nature also. While the earlier phase of Romantics is also a celebration of the countryside landscape of the flora and fauna, Victorian era saw a changing landscape to industries and factories. While the poor were exploited for the labor, the period witnessed the rise of middle class due to increasing trade between Britain and its colonies. There was also a shift from the romantic ideals of the previous age and towards a more realistic acceptance and the picture of the society. So we can say that Victorian age was the age of dilemma. There was a lot of compromise in this age. So before reading the poets like Robert Browning and Alfred Tennyson, we have discussed about Victorian age. So now, as we have discussed Victorian age, now in the next class we will discuss about the most representative poet of Victorian age, Alfred Tennyson. Thank you very much.